There's a world full of opinions. Everyone is trying to tell you what's best for you. Everyone is trying to tell you that what they believe is the gold standard, right? Whether they know it or not. And it's up to us to quiet the noise and learn how to trust ourselves. Welcome to You Can Trust Yourself with Meg and Maggie. Nothing feels as good as listening to your own voice, and each week we have conversations to help you do just that. Get comfy, grab your favorite fun drink, and let's dive into this week's episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of You Can Trust Yourself. We are coming to you in the morning again, a little later than our normal, but last time we recorded, we liked the morning vibe, so we are trying that again with you today. Today's topic is one that it's been kind of sitting for a minute, if you will. It's been like warming up. We have been thinking about this episode idea for a while, and I think there's still some hesitation on my end, not Maggie's. Maggie's, I think, ready to do this. I'm a little more nervous because, well, once you hear the episode title, you'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Those conversations are a little harder. We are going to be bringing you a concept today and a conversation that is surrounding the idea of swimming below the surface, which is my weird abstract way of saying we're going deep. Shocker, right?
Shocker.
Here on this podcast. Shocker. Do we know how to do anything else but go deep? But today we're going a little extra deep. So I use the analogy of an ocean for Maggie, and I was like, I want to swim below the surface of the waves. And we are talking about how because I can't tell you how the heck it's going to work for you. You got to get with yourself and trust yourself of how does one have difficult conversations when differing views are at play. And this episode has felt very relevant for a long time. It's also we had one, was it season 1, Maggie, or season 2? Do you remember?
I believe it was season 2.
Okay, so we had an episode a couple years ago of like controversial conversations, and it's one of our most listened to ones. And I think the reason why it is because one, those conversations are a little more difficult to find. And two, I think that a lot of times they are just not always ones that we want to hear. Like they're not, what's the right word? I think sometimes people just really want to get their point across, and then it kind of turns a lot of the rest of us off because we're just like, okay, that's great. And how does everyday people talk about things or choose not to talk about things that are differing in opinions? And especially with the way that the climate is on social media now and the way that our kind of the noisiness, if you will, of our culture and our world on a macro level, it's just a really difficult one to navigate. So we are going to do our best today. That is what I'm going to say. However much I choose to share, however much Maggie chooses to share, we are doing our best and we're showing up authentically to bring you conversations around trusting ourselves in these hard places. And we are not experts. And that's why we built our whole podcast around trusting yourselves, so we have no liability over what you choose to do. It was really just a way for us to say, trust yourself. Anyways,
That's very funny.
I'm excited to dive in, Maggie. Want to start by asking you, honestly, where you want to start. That's what I want to ask you. That's my first question is, we have a lot of places we can go, and we're going to go in this conversation. Where the heck you want to go first?
Ooh, this is a great question. Okay, so first, before we dive into that, I kind of want to leak something about myself.
Leak away.
I was just telling you before this that I have decided that I am stepping away from health and fitness coaching for good, which means for the foreseeable future, because who knows what's after that. But for now, I have decided to step away from that. So what that looks like is no more writing articles. I would love to still contribute to the radio, but maybe we could talk about something different. Maybe we could talk about this podcast. We'll have to see. But I have been coaching for, what year is it? 12 years? My goodness, that's terrifying. I feel so old right now. And it was an incredible chapter of my life. And what I've started to notice recently, and the reason why I want to share this is because this is not a decision I made in one day. This has been happening for years. I've been slowly pulling away, starting to do new things. And The reason why I wanted to share it is because it's taken a lot of time in order to get to a place where I feel like I can trust myself in the decision, right? Sometimes we know things immediately and we take action on them and we do them and perfect, amazing. And sometimes we may know something, but it takes a really long time to actually like put it into action, right? And there were other things that needed to fall into place before I could actually do this that I didn't even know needed to fall into place when I first started thinking about not wanting to do health and fitness coaching anymore. And so now that I'm at the end, I can see why it took me so long to, fully get to the place of not doing it anymore. And I am very satisfied with the timeline. I don't feel like I needed to do it any quicker. But I'm really excited about it. And one of the main reasons why I have decided this is because being a coach it's like part of me, right? I'm trained to do it so much that I don't even think about it. Like when I'm engaging in conversations with people, I naturally start coaching them. So I have to think about not coaching them, right? And I love that. And that's not something that will ever go away for me, right? I feel very able to help people. I can see blind spots. I can help you think about things from different perspectives and see a bigger picture, or maybe just provide you with information. I love that. And that's not something that will ever end. And holding on to this idea of being a health and fitness coach has been holding me back recently because it's putting me into a box that I no longer quite fit in. I have moved much more into being a business owner. I own 4 other businesses outside of health and fitness. And my husband and I also are partners in 3 other businesses. So that's 7 total that have nothing to do with health and fitness. And I've been spending the majority of my time learning how to do that. I currently am calling myself a part-time finance bro because that is what I have been spending most of my time doing recently. And I just think that that's hilarious. But yeah, so I just want to give that update. I will be sharing more about it soon on social media, but I'm really excited, and I'm really excited to step into this next chapter and give myself the ability to go big and not feel like I have to do something just because I've always done it.
I'm so happy that I like the phrase you said of like, I'm going to leak something about myself.
I'm gonna leak something.
There's nothing being leaked about us. No one is following us in the bushes yet. Hopefully that's never the case. So I'm going to leak some information about myself. I love
I
that.
just thought that was fun.
Yes, and I appreciate you sharing that with us because that ties so much into our podcast of we trust ourselves when we make decisions, big or small, right? We talk a lot about like small decisions because big, huge decisions don't come around all the time. Hopefully not. That sounds really hard and chaotic to like always be in big decision mode.
Mm-hmm.
But you're walking us through your real life journey, if you will. Journey sounds I hate the word journey, everybody. I need it to go away.
It
And
is
I'm aware.
very overused.
And I'm the one who overuses it. It's me. I'm the problem. Hi, Taylor Swift. It's me. Hi. It's me who overuses it. I hate the fucking word journey. Your experience. I like experience better. It just sounds like elevated, like the Target version of, journey. A little elevated, if you will. I love when you bring us in to the in the moment stuff because we've shared this before, but people always share the pretty product afterwards. They share I made this jump. Hey, let me show you about it. It's all pretty and packaged and da da da. And I just am leaning more into like, no. I want to see the in the moment. Show us the real, the human nitty gritty moments. So thank you for sharing that. And there's one other thing I want to add to it is just it feels good as your friend and co-host to be able I actively have to watch myself to make sure that I'm just holding space for what you're sharing. Because it's still an instinct for so many of us to be like, well, what about this? And I'm so curious and tell me more and da da da. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's just being curious and all the things. I don't know. I just find that it's really beautiful when people can just hold space for what I share. Therefore, I tried to do that for you today of like, you're just sharing what's happening right now. And I'm just being a curious cat, if you will, by trying to know more details. And so I just wanted to throw that out there that sometimes it's just beautiful to let people be exactly where they are and just let them share what's on their heart in this moment.
I appreciate that so much. I really, really do, because It's totally fine to answer the questions, right? When you share something new, it's natural for people to be curious, and that doesn't bother me. And you are 100% right. Sometimes it's nice to be able to just share and not have the burden of answering about it, right? And I think that's a really good point, because I think that ties in really well to the conversation that we're about to have too, because when you care about someone, there's a lot of different ways you can show up for them, right? And sometimes the best way is to really engage in dialogue and, answer the questions and be curious and all of that. And you can usually kind of tell if someone wants that, right? Or if you can't, you can ask them. I do that a lot. I will ask, I'll be like, do you want, would you prefer I just listen? Do you mind if I ask you some questions? And that helps a lot because it gives the other person input into how the conversation goes. But I really appreciate that. And to answer some of the questions, here's my self-perceived questions that I want to answer. Number one, if I have health and fitness questions, can I still call Maggie? Yes, of course you can. It's not going to go anywhere. It's still a huge part of my life, and that's not something that's ever going to change. So, Meg, whether it's you, whether it's anyone else, feel free to give me a call or a text. No problem whatsoever. I don't mind. I actually love it. So please continue. Second is, yeah, that was it.
I like it. That was your important question. You
Yep.
needed, I love it. It's like you leaked your own information and then you gave your own like journalist question. Like you wanted to answer one question in the leaked article and you just did that for yourself. And I'm all about that level of selfness.
Yep. Yeah. So that's it. That's the update in the Maggie world.
We love the Maggie world. And in our podcast, I almost called it the Meg and Maggie podcast. Oh my gosh, how crazy is that, guys? Throwback to our original title of the Meg and Maggie podcast when it's still just Meg and Maggie here. But I want to dive a little bit into the episode now, but it really does tie in really nicely with what you just shared, because in the world of differing opinions, which can we just start? This is where I'd like to start, Maggie, if it's okay with you.
Go.
Can we just start by acknowledging that we are all humans? Probably. Most of you listening are probably humans.
The dogs might be listening as well.
The dogs might be listening, the kitty cats, whoever's listening. We are humans who all come from many different places, many different upbringings, many different socioeconomic backgrounds, many different races, cultures, countries. We are all so different, right? We're similar in the fact that we're humans, right? That is the similarity. We are human beings who, depending on your spiritual beliefs, are pretty much doing this life for the first time. If you believe in the afterlife and you're here again, awesome. That's really freaking cool. But for the most part, we're just trying to do this life the one time that we're trying to figure it out together on this earth. So I want to kind of bring us to that weird, like, it's not even weird, but this like bird's eye view, if you will, of this conversation, because I think we lose sight of that a lot. So before we swim down deep, I'm just giving you a whole, like, you know me, I love the artsy, like,
we're in the ocean today. Let's go.
We're going in the ocean, but right now we're in the sky, looking down said ocean. And I want you to just remember that the conversations or the non-conversations or the emotions that are taking place amongst humans, we are all doing this for the first time. And we are all trying our own perception of our best a lot of times. And just having that reminder before we kind of dive in and go swimming deep in the ocean today is something that I have to remind myself of frequently. And I'd like to start there, Maggie, before we kind of go a little deeper into our topic today.
Yes, I love it. I think it's really important that we set the stage, right? So we want to talk about how we navigate having difficult conversations with people who believe different things than us, right? And the intention of this episode is not to get into beliefs that are right, beliefs that are wrong, nothing like that, right? It is more, how do we quiet the noise, right? I feel like we're going just actually, you know what? Let's just skip this whole thing. We're just going to insert our intro here, right? For the episode, and then we'll go on, because that's literally what this is. There's a world full of opinions. Everyone is trying to tell you what's best for you. Everyone is trying to tell you that what they believe is the gold standard, right? Whether they know it or not. And it's up to us to quiet the noise and learn how to trust ourselves. And that is the foundation of what we need to do in order to have conversations on topics that can feel charged, right? And when we are looking at it from above, I'll go with we're in the sky and we're looking at the ocean, okay? When you're looking at the ocean, especially near the shore, the waves are intense, right? They can be intense. There's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs. They're crashing on sometimes on rocks, sometimes on sand. Sometimes people are having a great time. Sometimes people are bawling their eyes out. There's a lot going on in the ocean, right? On the top. And if we stay on the top, then we're constantly going to be experiencing this roller coaster of constant crashes, wave, crash, wave, crash, wave, crash. It's very intense. It requires a lot of effort and energy to stay there, right? And we're not in control of what is happening to us. The ocean is fully in control. Right. And that is what we would like to compare to these challenging topics, whether it's political climate, whether it's religion. I would love to start with an analogy of being a fan of a sports team because I think that it explains it very well and is also kind of funny when you think about it from that perspective. And if we stay up at the top, that's where it's very intense. And what we're going to dive into today is how do we get deeper into the ocean where we are not getting smacked into the shore by the waves, where we are not being as affected by what's going on around us because we have done the work to figure out what is more important to us, what our core beliefs are, how we explain them, how we determine whether or not it's valuable to have a conversation with someone else, how we learn to listen, right? How we learn to, like what you said, Meg, hold space for those around us without maybe having to dive into any more, right? And when we get deeper into that ocean, when we do the self-reflection, the waves aren't present anymore. It's a little bit easier to swim, and hopefully you're by a very beautiful coral reef with some really cool fishies. How'd I do?
I
That was my analogy.
I freaking love a visual. Lead me through all the visual exercises like that. I'm so happy you set the stage of that because how many of us can relate to that? I mean, come on, like all of you listening, you trustees, like how many times have you been in scenarios or places or settings where you're like, shit, that was a wave? Oh God, no, I'm thrashing in the waves. I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. It's so noisy. I'm going to say out there because sometimes when we get on this podcast, I'm like, this is our little bubble, our
Yes,
community,
this is
right?
our bubble.
But that's the beautiful thing about community. Even though ours is virtual for now, we would love to do live podcast tours eventually because I just want to like touch you all and like, be near you and like all the things.
Go back a couple episodes
Go
if you
back a couple
missed that.
episodes. Again, not being weird. I just want to like touch your hand or your shoulder and like just like feel human to human contact, like a weirdo. But this is our community. And what happens is that when we let the noisy climate of social media, news, they're all media pretty much in general, right? But even if you come from a noisy climate of a workplace setting or a family, God, think of a Thanksgiving dinner, that can be a noisy climate. It can be really hard to not feel like you're succumbing to the waves and being tossed around a lot. The thing that's really important is that we have to remember we have the choice to go deep within ourselves and remember that we don't have to be thrust into these waves, right? We don't have to do this. And so the reason why I'm very excited to talk about this is because as we navigate these conversations, keeping that visual, I think, can be half of the exercise for us, right? So I am somebody who I have to think really critically about things. I have to kind of remain in this place where I can serve clients of different views, different backgrounds. I am kind of forced into being able to need to hold space for humans with wherever they are, which can be really hard at times, right? And when I remember that visual that we're all just kind of tossed into this noisy climate, it reminds me of how important it is for us to have self-trust and to be able to navigate that in a way that is helpful. So Maggie, let's transition a little bit more into the tangibles and the honesty of what this can really look like. So let's keep going with our visual and swim a little deeper where the bottom of the ocean floor is calmer, right? A lot of times it's a calmer place. I don't really know. I've never been to the ocean floor, but I'm going to pretend I have for the purpose of this visual. We didn't do the scuba diving on our honeymoon. Maybe. No, that's not true, everybody. I got to tell this story really fast. We did do scuba diving. I
You
did
did
not do scuba
snorkeling,
diving.
right?
Oh, yeah, that's different. Okay. Anyway,
But you
scuba
still
diving
got
and
to see the
snorkeling.
fish. Okay, you tell the story.
No, no, I didn't see the fish, Maggie, because we went on our honeymoon and we booked the excursion and blah, blah, blah. And we get off the boat and my husband's the first one off and he's down there looking at all the fish and blah, blah, blah. And I jumped in the water and said, nope, it's not for me, and got back on the boat. So I'm using a terrible analogy because I've never actually seen the ocean floor, but we're going to pretend that I have. And I've heard that it's really calm and peaceful down there, right? My husband said that it's pretty cool. I feel that when we can get to that place with other humans, that is where I find that I can, in a safer-ish way, have conversations, right? Because when people, you can tell, and I'm just going to say this super transparently, you can tell when people are just wanting to have some fun in the waves. That's how I'm going to phrase it. You can tell when other humans are like, I just want to splash you with a wave and just have this charged conversation because it's doing something for me of having this bickering and this stimulation, right? And then you got most other humans who are like, I'm actually okay. I could do without this stimulation. I'd rather actually just, do my life and try and do this world and not have this external stimulation of these charged conversations, whether they be politically, religiously. What are some other hot topic ones, Maggie, that we talked about?
Well, we
Just
talked about being a fan of a sports team, the
being a
Super
fan of a
Bowl.
sports team, divisive conversations, mental health, there's so many that can happen. We have to be able to recognize and trust ourselves enough of, are we splashing in the waves or am I in the comfort in a space with somebody at the ocean?
Yes. Okay. So I'm thinking, my brain's going 100 million miles an hour at once.
Bring us along.
I think that the first thing I want to talk about is that in the waves, right, where these charged conversations are, or we're being bombarded by media to believe things that are not usually true, right? That's usually where that's happening. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. When we're in that situation, we get to make a choice of how much we interact there, right? So what you're saying is, there are people out there, I can think of some of them right off the top of my head, who really enjoy bothering people. Like, they're going to say something just because they know that you believe something different than them and they want to piss you off, right? They want to get you going because they think it's fun or whatever, right? Whatever they believe. And we get to make a choice of how we interact with that. And sometimes I will recognize that it doesn't feel like we get a choice sometimes. It doesn't feel like we get a choice because we are either being bombarded by a person who's having like a one-on-one conversation with us. We are in an environment where there's like a bigger conversation going on, or we're just consuming conversations, right, of other people. And sometimes it can feel like we don't get to choose whether or not we interact. And the reality is that we do get to choose. We do get to choose. You can walk away. You can stand up for yourself. You can say thanks but no thanks. You can Irish goodbye. You can turn your phone off. You can turn the TV off. We get to choose, right? And I think that recognizing that is one of the most important things that we need to do before we can dive deep with ourselves and with others, right? Because if we don't recognize that we have the choice to choose how we interact in these situations, then we will always feel like we are a victim of what's going on around us. And we will always feel like we are like, that's just the way that it is. Oh, that's just the way that those people think. Those people, right? And then you get into these people versus those people, or us and them, right? Because we're not using our critical thinking skills to determine whether or not this piece of information is actually real, right? And so I think that it's important that we recognize that we have the opportunity and the ability to choose how we engage. And then that will free us up to be able to figure out what is important to us.
I really like that you kind of started us there, Maggie, because I think that aspect is really pivotal before we can even like get to the next level conversation. Because I'm thinking about it from the therapy point of view of when individuals are mandated into therapy or really encouraged like heavily by others based on, maybe ultimatums or things of that nature. their therapeutic experience a lot of times is not the same as somebody who's really showing up and wanting to engage with the therapeutic process, right? That's just something that we know. And it makes me think of this too, of when we have the choice to engage in conversations, when we recognize that we have the choice to engage in them, I find it similar to that therapeutic aspect of like we are going into it from a place of self. And that is where a lot of times more, what's the right word? Richness lives. Because when we operate from a place of self, that's self. That to me, and I know I'm a parts there, I know that's like my thing, but that is where the richness and the humanness lies. And I'm sorry, that is the kind of life I'm interested in. That doesn't mean it is for everybody, but for me, I am interested in the humanness of this life. And sometimes I believe that the virtual life and the media life of things and the divisive conversations, whether they be virtual or in person at the Thanksgiving dinner table, they take me away from the ooey gooey humanness of things. And I think that's why they feel very difficult to me. And if they feel difficult to me, I can probably safely assume that that's why they feel difficult to a lot of us. And I haven't had this thought before until now that we're recording, which happens so often. I wonder if that's why they feel so difficult, because they're absent of this primal human desire to connect with one another. I'm wondering if that's why, and this is literally like on the spot thinking, everybody. So let's all put our thinking caps on together at the same time, because I have not thought of this. And that's the fun of having episodes where they're not like perfectly curated, is the realness of, I wonder if that's why the conversations feel so difficult, is because they take us away from our primal nature of wanting to connect with other humans.
I I mean, I'm sure, right? Because we are, as humans, we need community, right? We need other people. And when we're faced with things that split us from people, make us feel isolated, right? Then that would lead to difficulty, right? Like that is a really good point, because I think that a lot of times what happens is we might have something we want to add to the conversation, right? Even let's say that a difficult conversation is going on around the Thanksgiving dinner table, and it's not even like heightened, right? Like no one's yelling. We're just like talking about something that could be considered challenging, and you have something that you want to add, but you're afraid that it will isolate you because other people
Hmm.
might not agree, right? Then of course that's going to lead to fear, and it's going to lead us to not sharing things. I think that's why a lot of times I err on the side of not sharing too much because of that. Like I'm afraid that I'm going to share something and then other people aren't going to agree with what I have to say. And then they're not going to be willing to listen. And then I'm going to be alone. And I think a lot of people feel that.
I want to stay here for a minute. It's so interesting. We didn't prep any of this part because it didn't come up organically. And it's really connecting to me right now of thinking like, wow, it's like Okay, bear with me, everybody. Again, I know I do this all the time, but this is what I do. This is the place that I operate from. Work as a therapist in training is parts work. And we talk a lot about abandoning different parts of us. And in this scenario, it's like, in order to engage in the divisive conversations on the surface of the waves, we have to abandon a lot of the humanness of us. And I want to kind of share this story that I think applies, and then we can go into a little more of the nitty gritty, Maggie, because I think we've warmed ourselves up enough to go into some more of the like honest, controversial places. But I went to a comedy show last night, solo, which I talked about on social media, being so excited to go see one of my favorite comedians, Heather McMahon. And I found myself, I was in the front row, and I only say that because it was the one ticket left, and I like got it for a great deal. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be like right in the front. And it was amazing. And I was telling Maggie that it kind of felt weird because I could see all the details on the stage because you're so close. And so I found myself not really being able to watch her, like listen to the comedy more. I mean, I still laughed and had an amazing time, but I found myself more so looking at her and her expressions and her humanness. And I think in hindsight, that's what I was doing. I had watched before she came out on stage this montage of her life and her socials and her things, and I've watched her on social media and listened to her on podcasts since 2018. So it's 7 years of getting to know this figure virtually, right? And last night was the first time I saw this human. And it was like my mind couldn't click. My mind was having a difficult time connecting to the fact that this figure who is done on social media is a human that I've never had any interaction with. And I hope that you're with me, trustees, because I know I'm going a little more where I go, which is, out there. Where I naturally go, but I'm about to bring it full circle for you. I think it would be the same thing with our political figures, with our religious leaders, and everybody else who feels there is like this noise around them. And a lot of it is probably true, and some of it probably not. And it creates this figure who doesn't feel human. And I think for me at least, and I'm wondering for all of you, please come talk to us. That's the purpose of this community. Is that why we feel icky engaging in these conversations, because it's absent of the humanness of people? Because all we're doing then, like Maggie said, let's bring it to this part, is we feel like we're sports fans who have no actual connection with any of the players. We have no actual buy-in with anything that's going on. We're just watching things take place. And we're like, why do I feel so icky leaving this conversation? And I think it's because we have actually no human primalness connection to it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think the way that I'm kind of seeing it is that we're not adding it in, right? I think it's not intentionally being taken away. I think it's more that we're forgetting to add it in. Like we're forgetting that the things that we're talking about, or the people that we're talking about, or the whatever that we have a differing opinion on, is also part of life, right? It's also part of the world and is most likely a human who is a human just like you and I, right? And I agree with you. It's easy to look at people who we've never had any interaction with and look at them as just a policy or a belief or this or a that, right? And that's not them at all. And I think that if we added the awareness of that back in, it might make it a little less triggering to have those conversations. I'm not sure that, I mean, I am fairly sure that the media does that intentionally to make us more divided. But I think in like normal conversation, like normal person to person conversation where we're all just humans having human experiences, we are like trained to think in the way that we're being fed, and we're just forgetting that we're all just people.
Yes. And let this be our reminder. It's my reminder, just recording this episode. It's hopefully y'all's reminder of, as humans, that these conversations are very tricky and difficult to navigate. So now I want to bring you a little more into me, because I just want to share some things surrounding, we promised you an episode that is, we're doing our best. We don't know exactly how it's going to unfold, but I feel it in me to want to share a little more of how this can feel and look in a real world setting. Of, it feels hard, it feels tricky, it feels like, wait, so if I find out that you voted differently than I did, or if you believe a religion differently than I did, or if you insert any divisive conversation of choice different than me, does this mean I'm not supposed to like you as a human? Does this mean I'm supposed to like stick with my team and make sure that I'm not associating with you? Does this mean that I'm letting my team down if I engage in a human conversation or a human friendship with others of differing opinions? God, my circle gets really small really fast, right? And so it's this really tricky place to be in, of knowing that the reality of that is really difficult. It's really, really hard to create a circle and a space that is only of people who think like you, or look like you, or are like you. And then it brings me back to, that's the exact opposite of what I believe. I want to learn from others, right? I always go back to saying that when I envision like my kids going to school and stuff, I want them to be around so many different people, so many different cultures and races and experiences, because to me that enriches the human experience, right? If I just only see people who look like me, are like me, same socioeconomic status, like, am I really stimulated? Am I really learning much? Am I really growing as a human being? I don't know, right? I don't know. For some, maybe, others, maybe not. Like, it's something that is difficult to walk through. But the part that I really find, and I'm sure we'll do a follow-up episode on this eventually, because I'm really in a season of one, trying to educate myself. I'm not in it yet. I haven't bought a book yet, so I'm like pre
She's
work on.
pre-contemplation. She's in
I'm
contemplation.
I'm pre education mode of wanting to learn more about our political system and how it works. I want to understand the branches of government. I want to understand how things get broken down, who does this, who does that. I didn't learn enough in history class, and I need a refresher, or honestly just more information in general. And so that's my own journey of learning more of those things. Therefore, it's hard for me to have political conversations because I feel that I don't know enough about certain topics. However, what I do know is my human instincts, right? I have human instincts based on my work and based on me as a person. The problem is that when both sides of any spectrum, politically, religiously, any other group, sports team, whatever the narrative has been created about them in the media is typically what we associate that said group with. And I fall for that all the freaking time because it can be scary to say, I'm a part of X group. Well, you can't account for what's going to happen in that group. We can't, there are so many outliers and things. So to associate your name and your soul and your humanness with a group is like abandoning parts of yourself and giving them over to a system that you don't have any control over. And that feels too scary for me at this time. With that being said, I've found, and this is what I really want to go into now, Maggie, and after you share like anything that you want to on this part of it, where and when can I swim to the bottom of the ocean with people that I feel safe enough to swim there with, and try our best to have conversations that are stimulating, maybe differing, and hopefully have the outcome of enriching us as human freaking beings. So Maggie, can you tell us how to do that? Because I don't actually know fully how to do that. So if you could pick up my slack here and
Well,
tell me.
I'll just tell you how it works in my brain, and you can do whatever you want with that. So, we're going back to sports for a second, and here's why. I have always been a pretty firm, like, anti favorite sports team person. Okay. As of recently, I would consider myself a New Jersey, New York Gotham fan, women's soccer, a New York Liberty fan, women's basketball, because it's pretty self explanatory. Obviously, live in New York, love women's sports. Like, those are my, like, quote unquote hometown teams. And so I support them. And I will never let my support for those teams override my support for women's sports. Okay, so stay with me here for a second. So, just because I have decided that I want to support those teams, aka like go to more games and whatnot, wear a Gotham jersey to the game, doesn't mean that I'm incapable of acknowledging when the other team has a really good play. Right? When you meet someone who's a fan of a team and all of a sudden it's like they have become such a fan of this team that their critical thinking skills just they go right out the window, and no matter what anyone else does, their team is the best, you're wrong, and they just want to fight you about it. Right? And that's pretty much why I've always been pretty solid on, like, I don't think having a favorite team is really like that good of an idea, because I think that it's really easy to fall into this category of no longer thinking, right? I'm no longer looking at the full picture of what's going on around me and making a decision. I'm defaulting to the fact that I like this team, therefore they must be right. And this is kind of like going back to what you were saying about identifying with a group and how we can lose parts of our humanness with it, because I think that identifying with a group, so like me being a Gotham fan, can be great because I can find other people who like Gotham. I can find other people who like women's soccer. I can find other people who want to talk about the game or whatever, right? And that's really powerful because we get to build community, right? Which is one of the things that's really important to us as humans. And if we go too far, then we have all of a sudden stopped looking at the bigger picture, right? So I'm never going to be a Gotham fan more than I'm a women's sports fan. If Gotham is doing something that is not good for the landscape of women's sports, then it's not good. It doesn't matter that I'm a fan of the team, right? And I have to be able to differentiate between those things. And I think the same thing happens when it comes to our political beliefs, our religious beliefs, anything else that can be challenging to talk about. Is we have to make sure that while we are aligning with something that is mostly in alignment with what we believe, there are going to be parts of it that are not in alignment with what we believe. And we have to be able to differentiate, right? What is the things that we agree with, what are the things that we don't agree with, and why. And I think the why is really important, and being able to figure those things out, which goes into what you were talking about our core beliefs. I don't know if we were talking about that on the episode yet or before we recorded, but when we can get down to what our core beliefs are and why, I think that then we are able to be deeper in the ocean and have those conversations with people, right? Because if we don't have that understanding in ourselves, and it doesn't have to be perfect, we just have to explore it a little bit. If we don't do that, then it's really hard to be curious. It's really hard to even like know what questions to ask, right? Where if we have a slight understanding of, okay, yes, I like this team, but why? Then I can connect to the why instead of the team. And now we can have conversations, because you might be connected to a different team and your why might be the same as mine.
I really, really love that the team's analogy is working better for me than the ocean one too. They're connecting beautifully, but like it really gives us a visual to hold in our heads, which is so helpful when we are navigating challenging places or conversations, right? And so for you, Maggie, what you're explaining, first of all, I freaking love that of like, your goal is women's sports, right? That's your goal. Your goal is to support women's sports. Like, amazing, right? And you choose to root for this team while you do it. But the core of you, the self, Maggie leading with self, is there to support women's sports, right? That, if we break that down to other places, I am not about to give you a spiel of like, there's so much this and that politically, and there's good and there's bad. You don't, that's not why you came here for our podcast, okay? That's just not. You trust yourself enough to go and find that information somewhere else. That's not why you came here. Our job is to remind you to go deep within yourself, like Maggie said, and explore self for you. You can trust yourself. I can't say that enough, and I love our title so much because it's the opposite in so ways. It's probably just me being I tend to go a little oppositional with things and a little
No way.
rebellious. No way. A little rebellious, if you will. At times I've gotten better about it because sometimes I think I just did the opposite. Sometimes like even just to like, just do the opposite of it. But it's the opposite in a lot of ways of the noise of so much of media or conversations or places is just, I think a lot of people are trying to build community based off of a few beliefs that they have, but they go about it in like a shameful way that then makes us feel more isolated when we have differing views. So this is our reminder here on our podcast that when you trust yourself, you're going to, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to abandon any parts of you that are really strong, right? There are parts of me that are really strong. And I'm going to share what they are because it feels right to, and it feels like I want. There are places that there are core beliefs, like Maggie said, that I can't necessarily see other places. There are some things that are so important to me. Women's rights to choose, right? Let's go with the women theme of women's sports. A woman's right to choose for her body and her healthcare, to me, is a very big core belief that I have. Autonomy over your body and your decisions with your healthcare team is a root belief of mine. And it's one that I want to do my best in this space and season of life. And that will look very different season to season of how am I showing up for that, right? Is that me just making it clear that I believe in that? Is that me advocating and doing some activist work around that? Is that me holding space for a woman in a session who did make a choice and is now processing that? Right? It can look like all of those and everything in between. Those core beliefs of ours is where I think a lot of us get stuck in the weeds and the trickiness of things, of feeling like, God, but I'm going to stop speaking for all of you because what I'm really doing is trying to speak for myself. And I'm trying to say that we feel like it's tricky, but what I really mean to say is that I feel like it's tricky. I'm still in this messy part, and I may always be, of feeling like, wait, okay, if I believe in gay marriage and you don't believe in gay marriage, where does one meet in the middle? Right? That's where it can get tricky. And that's where it can feel like I believe that humans should be able to marry humans that they love. Period. That's just what I believe at my very, very core. And if you believe that only males and females should be allowed to get married, now we're in tricky waters, right? But the thing is that in my real life, I've never actually run into that conversation. It's only on the swirly, whirly waves of the media have I run into that conversation. It's like try and stay with me here too. It's like I'm having that conversation with the one person after a sports game who causes violence after their team lost. So the conversation is with this one extreme outlier and me. This extreme outlier is online. I don't know who the heck they are. They could be AI for all I know. And I'm over here getting heated because they have a different belief than mine, but I've never actually ran into a real human being who has articulated that to me. So it's like I'm letting the sports fan who blows up the car or who, does some violent act determine these conversations that I'm thinking I'm having, but I'm really not. And that's why swimming down to the bottom of the floor with people who are also capable of swimming down to the bottom of the floor is necessary in order to not abandon ourselves and to not put ourselves in boxes where we don't fit. That I think is the tricky part. And that's the part that I'm not there yet. Sometimes I feel like my beliefs and my views, it's like none of the above. None of the above apply because none of them fit my individual experience and what I hope for humans necessarily. Therefore, it's really hard. And I also recognize that it's important to vote. It's important to try our best. It's important to show up and act and do whatever that work is with the best that we can at that moment. So I don't have a perfect plan for you. I don't have a freaking blueprint of how to have these conversations. I have my experience currently, and I can tell you that I'm doing my best with what I have right now, not to abandon myself and to try my best to be with others who don't abandon themselves either.
And that's beautiful. It's a beautiful place to be in. And the work is going to look different all the time, right? You're going to get comfortable with some part of it and then great, comfortable with that part. Now there's something else to work on, right? Now there's something else to get a little bit more comfortable with. And I don't think it's something that ever really ends. We can just start to figure out ourselves a little bit better, right? Like for me, for example, I'm not a big sharer until I really trust someone, until I know that they love me unconditionally. I don't share a lot of those things with people. And I don't know if that's like past trauma, like, making me not want to share, or if it's more just about who I am. Like as a person, I'm like I default to listening for the most part, which is kind of funny because I have a podcast and we blab away. But in most conversations, I default to listening and I will share occasionally, right? Like when I feel like I have something to add, I will add it. I'm not like the lead of the conversation type person in a group. So it could just be the way that I am, right? And that's falling into more difficult conversations as well. But before we end this episode, I would like to share just a couple of things that do really help me like practically navigate these situations, just as an idea that might help you. So the first one is going off of what I just said is listening. And I mean actively listening, right? So what that means is I am listening to what you're saying and I'm not just trying to figure out what I'm going to say back to you. Right? If I'm spending time while you're talking, trying to figure out what I'm going to say, then I'm not actually listening. I'm just formulating what I'm going to say. Right. And so listening means like to hear with no agenda, right? I just want to hear what you have to say. And the next thing that I do to help myself with that is I love to call them clarifying questions. And I will say, like, I have a clarifying question, but I will ask you questions to get a better understanding of something that I'm not following, right? Or maybe it's an area where we have differing beliefs. And instead of attacking back, right, and being like, oh, I can't believe you believe that, or I don't believe that, or whatever, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Can you explain why you think that that's true or why you believe that, right? And it's really hard. I'm making it sound really easy. It's really hard, and a lot of deep breaths are involved and a lot of like fighting anxiety and heightened emotions in my stomach usually. But what it does is it gives me an opportunity to hold space for someone else. And I am learning things, which I love to do personally. And it's helping me formulate my own beliefs, because when I hear something from someone else, then I can differentiate whether or not, oh, yeah, I agree with that, or I agree with this, but not that, or no, I don't agree with that at all. And it helps me formulate my core beliefs better too. And so I think that that's something just to consider, is that there's a lot of work to be done on our own when it comes to figuring out what's important to us. And there's a lot that we can figure out in conversation with others if we're willing to listen to them.
Yes. I don't have much to add to that. The only thing that feels important for me to add is when we are in places that we feel passionately about, I believe in being able for myself to stand in that, and also believing in myself to sit in that. As weird as that sounds, like there is still something to be said about, like, I'm picturing the refreshingness of somebody quietly volunteering or donating or whatever it is to whatever they believe in, and it's not talked about. I'm picturing some, like, I don't know why, like professors are coming to my head, like some like old professor vibes of like believing in something, standing in it, donating in the way that makes the difference to whatever said belief is, and whatever that means, whether it's time, money, any other resource, and just feeling good in that. Like there's something refreshing about moving it from the external, which is so the theme right now and the climate of external, to internal, recognizing injustice in the world and acting accordingly with your resources to contributing to those injustices. And not the noise of it can take away from the actual value of contributing to whatever it is. So with this being said, everybody, I'm sure we will have more conversations regarding this, especially if you all tend to like click on this one a lot, because it seems we like to follow that because, one, we want to put out what you enjoy, and it means that it's needed, right? So when people come and listen to certain episodes more than another, it means that you're craving something like that. And we want to create the space for a community that we're having the conversations of where they feel right in us all. So till next time, everybody. See you soon.
Yeah, we'll see you next week, and we'll be back with a completely different conversation.
Woo, woo.
So be ready.
Bye,
we love
guys.
you so much. Bye. Thank you for joining us on another episode of You Can Trust Yourself with Meg and Maggie. Our mission is to leave you with encouragement and tools to nurture your ability to trust yourself. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe and please share it with a friend. Then take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review. Your support helps our show grow, and for that, we are extremely grateful. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch the episodes. Till next week, lots of trust and love, Meg and Maggie.